Welcome to Zeph's house. Come in out of the dark and pull the door shut behind you. Tonight's tale is called Mercy. They tell you a drought is a slow thing. It isn't. It's a thing that takes its time right up until the morning you walk down to the water and find the steeple looking back at you. I've lived on this ridge above Dray Lake my whole life. 71 years, and for 70 of them, that lake was just a lake. Good bass water. Folks come up from 3 counties to fish it. They don't know what they're floating over. Most of them never knew there was a town down there at all. There was. Mercy, it was called. My people were from it. My father was born in it, and his father preached in it. Mercy Chapel. White clapboard, a bell in the steeple my grandfather rung every evening of his life. In the winter of 1953, the power company dammed the Coley River at the Narrows, and the valley filled up over the course of a spring, and Mercy went under. The river took the houses first, then the road, then the chapel, the steeple last of all. The way a man drowning holds his hand up over the water until the very end. They moved the living, paid them out, trucked them up to the new towns on the ridges. And they moved most of the dead, dug up the churchyard, and carried the boxes up to higher ground. Most of them, not all. The state was paying by the grave, and there were a lot of poor graves in Mercy with no name and no kin left to fuss. And those they left them down in the dark under 200 feet of cold water and called it done. My grandfather signed the papers that let them flood his town. He didn't fight it, which surprised everyone because he'd fought everything his whole life. He signed it, and he made the men from the power company put one line in the agreement, and he stood over them while they wrote it. The water level of Dray Lake shall not at any time be permitted to fall below the top of the Mercy Chapel steeple. They thought he was a sentimental old man who couldn't bear to see the cross go under. They humored him. They wrote it in. And for 70 years it held, because there was always rain enough, and nobody ever had cause to let that lake get low. This summer there wasn't any rain. It started in May. By June, the creeks were down to a trickle, and the corn was curling brown in the fields. By July, the lake had dropped past every mark anybody living had ever seen. You could walk out on cracked mud where the boat ramp used to end. And one morning, in the middle of all that heat, I came down with my coffee, and there it was, out in the middle of the water, the tip of the steeple. Black with rot and weed, breaking the surface for the first time since before I was born. I'll be honest, the first thing I felt wasn't fear. It was a kind of wonder. There was Mercy, coming back up to the light. I thought about my grandfather. I thought it was a sad and beautiful thing. I didn't remember yet what he used to say about the bell. The water kept dropping. There wasn't any rain in the forecast, not for weeks. Every morning, a little more of Mercy stood up out of the lake. A whole steeple, then the chapel roof, then the roof lines of the houses along what had been Main Street, all of it slick and black and hung with weed, stinking of the bottom of the world. The graveyard came up on the rise at the edge of town, the stones that were left leaning every which way in the mud. And the mud went out and out as the water pulled back, a gray, dead flat a half-mile wide where the lake used to be. People came to look, of course. You couldn't keep them away. They parked along the ridge road with their phones out, walked down onto the mud flat in the evenings to stand in the streets of a town that drowned before their grandparents were born. The county put up a sign that said, "Keep off the lake bed, unstable ground." Nobody paid it any mind. The bell rang for the first time on a Tuesday evening, just at dusk. I heard it from my porch, clear across the water. One stroke, slow. Then a long wait, longer than a bell should wait. Then another. There is nobody up in that steeple. I want to be plain about that. The chapel has stood under the lake for 70 years. The rope rotted off the bell before my mother was born. There is no man up there to ring it, and there is no wind that rings a bell one slow stroke at a time, with a count between like something keeping time. But it rang. I sat on my porch and I counted, and it rang 11 times, slow, and then it stopped, and the dark came down over the mud flat and over Mercy and over the gray, cracked nothing where my lake used to be. That was when I remembered what my grandfather said. He said he rung that bell every evening, not for the Lord and not for the town. He said he rung it to keep the valley quiet. He said there was something in the ground at Mercy, older than the chapel, older than the first cabin, that didn't care for the light or the noise of living people, and that the ringing kept it down where it belonged. And he said, I was a boy, I half listened. He said the day the bell stopped was the day you got up the ridge and you did not come back down. He didn't sign those papers to save his church. He signed them because 200 feet of cold water rings louder than any bell. The flood wasn't the end of Mercy, it was the lid. And the drought has taken the lid off. The bell rings every evening now. It started at 11 strokes. 3 nights later it was 9. Last night it was 6. It's counting down to something, and I don't know to what, and I'm afraid I do. The graves on the rise are open. I've seen them through my glasses from the porch. The few stones that were left and the dark holes in the mud in front of them, neat and empty, like whatever was in them simply got up and walked off across the flat. I don't go down to look closer. The young ones do. The Harmon boy went down 2 nights ago with his friends to see the drowned town by flashlight, and his mother's been on the ridge road every evening since, calling his name out over the mud, and the mud just lays there and doesn't answer. At dusk now, there are figures out on the flat, out past the chapel, where the water still stands in a shrinking gray pool. They don't move the way people move. They stand, and they face the ridge, and when the bell rings, they come a little closer to the shore than they were the night before. I've stopped counting how many. The county finally barred the lake road. Too late for the Harmon boy. Too late, I think, for the 4 or 5 others nobody's quite admitted are gone. They're saying it's the unstable ground, the mud, people wandering out and getting stuck and going under. That's the story, and it's a good one, and I hope to God they keep believing it. Because the truth is up on this ridge with me, and I'm too old to carry it much further. I have asked everyone I can find about the rain. The man on the television says the high pressure is locked in. He says it could be September before it breaks. He says it cheerful, like it's a thing about lawns and gardens. He doesn't know that every day without rain is another foot of water gone, and that there's a pool out there in the middle of Mercy getting smaller every morning, and that when it's gone, when that last gray water dries up off the bottom of the world, whatever my grandfather drowned will be standing on dry ground in the open air for the first time in 70 years. The bell rang 4 times tonight. I sat on my porch and I counted, and I looked out over the dead flat at the black steeple standing up against the last of the light, and I thought about my grandfather signing those papers with his jaw set, knowing exactly what he was buying us. 70 years. He bought us 70 years. I'd give anything for rain. I stand out in my yard in the evenings now, and I look up at that hard, empty sky, and I pray for it the way he must have prayed, ringing that bell, every single night of his life. But the sky stayed clear. The bell rang 3 the next night, and 2 the night after that. Then yesterday the clouds came, real ones, gray and heavy, stacked up over the western ridge, and the whole county stood out in their yards with their faces turned up to them. I stood out in mine, and I prayed the way my grandfather must have prayed every evening of his life, ringing that bell into the dark. The clouds came right up to the lip of the valley. They sat there a while, and then the wind turned and carried them off south to fall on somebody else's drought, and the sky over Dray Lake went clear and hard and bright as the head of a nail. The pool in the middle of Mercy was gone this morning. All of it. Just cracked gray mud now, clear across the bottom of the valley, steaming a little in the heat. There is no water left down there to drop. The lid is off. I came out on the porch tonight, the way you'll keep going back to a thing even when you know better. And the flat was empty. All those shapes that had been gathering out by the last of the water, gone. Not sunk back down into the mud, just gone from the flat. And I made myself sit there and look at the long gray slope that runs up from the dead lake bed to my ridge, to the road, to my yard. The bell rang once. One stroke, slow, and it came across the dry valley closer than it has ever sounded, though the steeple has not moved 1 inch in 70 years. And then nothing. No second stroke. There is no count left now. There is nothing left to count down to. I have the truck keys in my hand. The tank is full. I'm going to drive up out of this valley, and I'm not going to look in the mirror, just like he told me when I was a boy and only half listening. Because down there, on that dark slope, somewhere between the drowned town and my porch, I can hear something coming up out of Mercy at last. Slow. Unhurried, in no kind of rush at all. It has got all the time in the world now. 70 years my grandfather bought us. I used to think that was a long time. That's all for tonight. If this one stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe. There's a new strange tale every week. Sleep well, if you can.